Hello, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Boland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, We're Not Stumped. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Boland, and today I welcome a man who's making a difference in the limb loss community, and that's Mr. John Werner. A little bit about John. John had been retired from Xerox after 41 years of service for just a couple of months in January of 2019 when he began experiencing extreme pain in his ankle. 2 months later, his right leg below the knee was amputated. We're going to get into that and more on this episode of the We're Not Stumped podcast. So first of all, John, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on this podcast.
No problem.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about you, but we start the podcast with a lot more about you, and that's in your own words. So I want to hear the John Werner story.
Okay. Like you said, I worked for Xerox for 41 years, servicing copiers, typewriters, computers. It changed through the years. And so I was on my feet and traveling quite a bit. And in most of, big part of Pennsylvania is the area that I covered. And then when the last few years I actually worked at home and talked to customers on the phone when they would call for service. We'd try to fix it over the phone if we could. If we couldn't, then we would place a call when somebody would actually go to the account. So I did that, and then I decided after 41 years I've had enough and retired and was planning on enjoying my retirement. And like I said, it was in November when I retired. In the beginning of January, my leg started hurting down around my foot, turning red, and couldn't figure out what was going on. Went to the hospital. At first, they thought it was cellulitis, a skin problem. Gave me medications. Didn't seem to do anything. Was getting worse. Then I started getting actually very sick from whatever it was. And my third ambulance ride actually went from my local doctor's office. The ambulance driver said to my wife, "Do you want us to take him to a different hospital?" And she goes, "Yes." And I went there. It was a bigger hospital. And they decided, after looking at it, we're going to do an MRI and see what's going on with this leg. And they found out deep bone infection right above the ankle. And also had discovered the ankle was starting to fall apart from arthritis and just age.
Yeah.
And so they started some IVs to fight the infection, sent me home. I was taking the IVs at home, and that didn't seem to do much. Went to see the doctor again, who happened to be a surgeon. And he decided, after looking at everything that was going, he decided we really should amputate below the knee before we have to take the knee too, because it's spreading. It's working its way up the leg, plus it's making you very sick. They could see that. And I had no idea an amputation was part of the procedure.
Wow.
And in tears, I signed the paper to go ahead and do the amputation. And then I was very nervous.
Sure.
Went into the hospital. When I went in, my leg was so bad, when they went to weigh me, I couldn't even stand on the scale right. They had to hold me up. And then I had the surgery. That day, when I came out of surgery and recovery, I was in a hospital bed. My family came in, looked at me, their eyes got big, and says, "You look 100% better. You're not sick anymore." And I said, "Yeah, and my leg doesn't hurt. It's not there, but it definitely doesn't hurt." And that just things went really good after that. It was the best decision was to have the amputation. And so I went from there and went to rehab, learned how to do stuff without a leg at first and be in a wheelchair. Worked really well there. I loved the first test they did to me was I went into rehab to actually do something, and I was in a wheelchair, and the guy puts a walker in front of me, says, "Get up and see how far you can walk. I'll follow you with the wheelchair." And I got up and I started walking with the walker, went about 20 feet. And I said, "I think that's about as far as I can go." And he says, "Okay, turn around and go back to where you started. I'll follow you again with the wheelchair in case you have to sit down." And I walked back to where I started. And then he said, "Now I know what you can do. Now we can work with you."
Mm-hmm.
And then they built me up and it went really well. And I've gone back and visited them at the rehab center because they wanted to see how I could do after I got a prosthetic, which able to walk up and down the hallways. They said, that's what we wanted to see. And it really worked. So it made me feel a lot better that I could do that. And it was a normal procedure, walked with a walker, then went to rehab and they said, let's try a cane, walked with a cane, walked with that for a while. One day I realized I'm carrying the cane, I'm not using it. And I said, okay, I don't need the cane anymore. So since then I've been able to walk without a cane. And that was a little over a year after I started, maybe less. And then I got connected with an online group because right after in that is when COVID started. Yeah. I was lucky it hadn't started when I had my surgery and initial rehab, and got connected with an online group with a woman, Leslie Green.
Great person.
Very helpful. It's
yes.
kind of a nationwide online group, talking to other amputees and finding out life goes on. And, you know, there's other people out there, and it was very helpful. And then I began to realize I'd like to meet people locally to me because there wasn't much anything close to me. And I decided to start my own group to have live meetings.
That's great.
Because it was after the COVID restrictions. And I found a very close YMCA that I asked them, and they said, we can give you a room to use for the meetings, no charge, which is, I didn't have money to spend. So
yeah,
and, they set me up and it worked out. It had, was on the first floor, so easy wheelchair access for those still in wheelchairs. And it has gone the first year. I've been having those meetings for a little over a year. I only had a couple of people. There was one meeting that was just me. Nobody else made it.
At least nobody argued with you.
Yeah. And this last meeting I had just this past Saturday, a few days ago, I had 6 other amputees at the meeting.
That's great.
Since I had gotten the word out through the local newspaper.
Great.
And it really is starting to go now. And that's what I'm looking for. And everybody loves it because talking to another amputee means a lot more than talking to a fully limbed person. Yeah. And, you know, so we're still us. We just, as I like to put it, we have aftermarket parts.
Yeah, no longer OEM, huh?
Yeah, I just try to make as much humor in it as I can. And everybody has a good time and we talk and it's been great.
I'm going to have links and ways to get a hold of you for that. I want to ask you specifically about that part of your life in a minute, but you had said something that really reminded me of my previous guest, Tracy Lamar. She's a bodybuilder, and she had a very, very similar story to you. She hurt her knee, and then it began to get infected, and the infection really affected her overall life, and she didn't realize how much it affected her overall life until her amputation happened and that infection was no longer in her body. It sounds like exactly what you went through. When you woke up, you were, as you said, your friends and family said you look like a new person. Is that the way you felt as well?
Yes, it really made me feel like, okay, I'm good again, and yeah, all right. So I'm missing part of my leg, but I'm still here and I'm still me. And that's one of the things that people need to realize. Yeah, it's scary facing an amputation. Yes, I was scared, didn't know anything about it. But then after I found out what life is and talking to other people online and whatnot, I found out, oh, it's just you're in another family, basically. And one of the things that I've attended now is Empower Fest, which is put on by Hanger Clinic. And it is a very big thing. And this year I'm going to my third one. And last year, the one I went to had over 180 amputees of all types at the thing, and getting to talk to the people and seeing what people are doing and things that they have for you to do when you're there to show you you can do almost anything you want. If you're trained and taught, it's a little bit different, but it's possible. So,
yeah, people ask me how I do things with one hand, and I'll tell them that sometimes that, hey, it may take me a little longer to do something, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I still want to accomplish things, and it sounds like that's exactly what you've learned as well. I want to go back to your very understandable attitude going in, and I think a lot of listeners, either they're, depending on where they're at in their journey, may either be in that decision phase where something is looming for them, or just post. What you said, it was a lot of you shed a lot of tears and probably consulted your family. What was that phase like for you?
It was scary and without knowing a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do now, and I try to do, is because I went through this, it was scary. I had no idea what was going to happen. But now we're talking, we find people that are looking to have an amputation.
Yeah.
And they, again, have no idea what's going to happen. And we talk to them and show them that life goes on. This is just a change. Yeah, and it's different for different people depending on the level of amputation.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts. I've met people at Empower Fest that are quadruple amputees, no legs, no hands.
Yeah.
And they're still women raising families,
yeah,
living life, enjoying it. It is possible. And, and it's a lot up here. You got to have your mind set that you're going to do this. I've talked to a few people that we had a guy in Leslie's group that she said, talk to this guy. He's a retired sheriff out west a little bit. And strong guy, used to doing a lot, riding horses, whatnot. And he was told by his doctors, I think we're going to have to amputate below the knee for a problem he was having. And I'm not sure I want to do that. Well, he got on our group, on Leslie's group, and started talking to other people and realized, oh, life goes on. And he, during the meetings one day, announced, I've scheduled my amputation. And we're all like, oh, you're going to do it. He said, yeah, I've decided after talking to all you people, it's not that bad. And he got it, and he's doing great. We've been talking to him, and he's traveling around. He got to ride a horse because he owned horses. And it blew me away because he said, oh, I got to ride a horse. I said, oh, wonderful. He says, yeah. He says, I got up on a picnic table and then got on the horse. And I said, you got on a picnic table with a prosthetic? I said, that blows me away. I never thought of doing something like that. And I actually got to ride a horse at one of the Empower Fests 2 years ago. They had the place that they had it had a small ranch right in the hotel area, and they allowed most all the amputees to ride horses. And they had it all set up and helped people. We had little steps that we climbed up, and then they had 2 or 3, 4 people help you get on the horse, and which I greatly appreciated, and it was a lot of fun, and went for a nice ride. And I mean, there was people there. I know there was one girl there. She didn't have legs below the knees, and she didn't have hands. And they got her on a horse, and the guy asked her, "Do you feel secure on the horse?" And she goes, "Not really." And he said, "Oh, well, we'll have somebody, one of the people that worked there, held on to her while we went on a ride, so she didn't fall off the horse." She had a blast. So there's ways to do a lot of things.
What a great story. And you said Empower Fest is coming up. Is that correct?
Yes, there's one coming up June 7th through the 9th. It's the weekend, and it's in Hollywood, Florida.
Okay.
And I know some people that I've been communicating with through Facebook, and I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah.
Because 2 of the people I know, 2 of the women, last year they were in wheelchairs. They didn't have prosthetics. This year they've got prosthetics, and they'll be walking at Empower Fest. And that just blows me away that in a year they went from a wheelchair to actually walking. And they're just so happy and amazing. And their stories alone are quite amazing. So what they went through.
And they're living their life and being happy. And I'll make sure that I add links to the description to Empower Fest. I'm sure I think you said it was through Hanger. So yes. I'm sure that if anyone's just listening to the podcast and not able to look at the description, they can go to Hanger and find out more. So that's a fantastic
if you go to
story.
The Hanger website, they list it there.
Excellent. And you just brought up prosthetics, and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you were new to this game, I guess is a good way to put it. And now you had to find out a lot more about prosthetics and then go through your own prosthetic journey. What was that like for you to get fitted and to find and to be where you're at now, and which may not be the end result, but be where you're at now?
I've been fortunate enough. The first prosthetic I got, which I actually have here yet, this is my first prosthetic in the foot, which you put a shoe on. So they have this, and then they mold this. Sometimes they take that and they'll put a physical mold on you, almost like they're putting a cast on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it hardens. And then that gets, because everyone's different. You can't take somebody else's part and put it on. They have to be molded to what your leg is.
Yeah.
And that worked. And then later I found out about the foot on this one doesn't have hardly any flexing. It's just this fiberglass thing, and it doesn't move. So you've got a stationary foot. The one I have now moves in the ankle. So when I walk, it flexes more to give me easier to walk up and down hills, uneven terrain and whatnot. And it's electronic and hydraulic. And it really makes a big difference. I was fortunate enough to get that. And when I got that, I needed a new socket because your limb changes after the operation. It's swollen, then it'll shrink and whatnot, and really makes a difference. So I gotten a whole new leg and whatnot, and that worked out. Now, this one I kept it like this because I use it at night. If I have to get up and go to the bathroom, this one fits looser than the one I wear now, and I can slip it on pretty easy and actually walk to the bathroom, where originally I had to use a wheelchair to get to the bathroom. And then I thought of something else because something I like to do, my wife and we like to kayak.
Oh,
And I've kayaked, and originally I had to take the prosthetic off because I have a size 12 foot
wow.
in an enclosed kayak. And
That's a
it would
kayak.
not,
That's a kayak in itself.
yeah, and my foot would not fit in the kayak upright,
Mm,
and I couldn't turn my leg. So what I did is I got something, this piece here,
okay.
which is normally for people with above knee prosthetics, that this goes at the knee so they can rotate the knee and turn the bottom part of their leg up
Okay.
to work on the shoe, the foot, whatever. What this does for me is I hit a button,
Oh,
and then if I can hold it right, I can rotate the foot.
wow. And that helps you get in and out. Is that correct?
Well, what I can do is I can wear the prosthetic when I'm in there
Okay.
and turn it to the side
Got it. Okay.
so I can leave the prosthetic on, because trying to put a prosthetic back on while you're in a kayak is not easy.
No, I would imagine it isn't.
No. So I use that, and it was something that I did myself to that after it was, I got my new one, then I put that on the old one and said, oh, now I can, and I've done it. I can be in a kayak and keep the prosthetic on.
So when you say you did it yourself, how did you get the part? Did you go through Hanger to get the part? Did you make it yourself?
Well, this part, I found out
I love this story.
this part, if you buy it new, it's made by Autobach,
Okay.
is $660, and that's only this much of it.
Wow.
It ain't cheap.
Sure.
What I did, because I'm an online shopper anyhow, I found one in Germany on eBay
Wow.
that they were selling for $300. And I bought it, and it came from Germany, and it's like a brand new one.
Wow.
And I had learned watching what they do, how the screws work and whatnot. Not something normally people do themselves. You know, you go in to your prosthetist that makes the prosthetic, and they do all that. But me doing what I did for Xerox and whatnot, I tinker at a lot of stuff. So I said, I think I can put it together. And it's worked. So,
I think I love that story. I think it's great. I think it really exemplifies you taking, to a certain extent, control of your own amputation and prosthetic journey, and it's working.
yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And something else, as we had a little pre-conversation, I noticed your shirt, and as we were talking about, you're talking about doing things for yourself. You also talked about your attitude and how your attitude is towards your amputation. And I believe you said the humor really helps you and possibly others. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I have a number of t-shirts. I started finding them and ordering them like crazy because, again, I have a sense of humor and make jokes about a lot of stuff. And this one says, I'm just in it for the parking, and I wore that to one of my meetings, and some of the people in there started busting up laughing.
Mm-hmm.
They never thought of it that way because, I use handicap parking, though I've met some others that don't use handicap parking, and they have two prosthetic legs. They said, I'm not disabled. That's the way I feel, and that's the state of mind and the way you want to be.
Yeah.
Hey, rock star parking for me? Yeah. I didn't get to use it before. Now I'm going to take advantage of it. So, though, when I go to my meetings now, because I have other amputees showing up, I don't park in handicap parking. I let them park there. So, and if there isn't any available when I go to a store, I'm like, oh, well, I can do it. And it's just, and I've got a number of different t-shirts that say different things. There's all sorts out there, which you can get on Amazon or other places that just sell. All you have to do is look up humorous amputee t-shirts, and you'll find all sorts of ones that are out there.
Yeah, that's great. That really helps with the overall attitude. How does that feel knowing where you came from and really shedding some tears about having an amputation, all the way to, hey, let's use humor to make it even better for not only myself but for others.
Well, I used humor in a lot of parts of my life. And like anybody else, I have days that I'm like, this is a nuisance, because I can tell I'm walking on a prosthetic. I can walk, I can get around, and I'm like, oh, this is a nuisance. But then I just right away go to myself, but hey, I'm walking,
Yeah.
so that's a big thing. And uh, I see other people doing things. We've had people come to Empower Fest that on the meetings, they're sitting there and they're like, I don't know if I'm good enough to go to Empower Fest. And we go, oh, yes, you are. And I've seen the people go there and then suddenly wouldn't believe what they're doing. And they're like, this is fantastic. I'm ready to go again. And it really helps everybody. And, to see how people go. But yeah, almost everybody has, which I've had too, like I'm saying, oh man, I lost my leg, but I'm still doing almost everything I did before. I mean, I can climb ladders, do work around the house, which I'm one that likes to take care of things around the house. And I ended up lucky. I have a little over an acre of yard,
Wow.
and I had a garden tractor, and I'm lucky it only has a left foot pedal to operate it. And I have a left leg, so I can do that. I got a left pedal for my truck to help me drive. But I found out now I can drive a lot of other cars. I drive my wife's and my mother's car with my prosthetic foot. There's no adapter or anything in the vehicle, and I can still drive it.
Wow.
So, it again, and I've known other people that have both legs. And one of the people at my meeting, actually two of the people, come to think of it, don't have legs below the knee on either side. And they're driving with no extra things. I mean, a lot of people get hand controls and whatnot. No, they're using their prosthetics. And I like to collect videos of amputees doing things that you wouldn't expect. I have one that shows a man with bilateral, both legs above the knee, driving a 6-speed sports car with no extra stuff in the car, just using his prosthetics.
Wow.
And it blows me away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's
I
amazing.
get amazed by a lot of things that I see.
Well, as you said, it's like a community or a family. And
Yeah.
it's great to be able to see those stories because it really does impact. I think it impacts people beyond the community, but it certainly helps and impacts our community. There's something I wanted to ask you, though, and this one is not necessarily, well, it does have to do with the amputation. But when I think about your life and your career, being at Xerox for 41 years and then within months having to lose your leg, what was that like mentally for you? Because you're looking forward to maybe doing yard work on your acre of land, and suddenly, guess what? All this time I put in, and now there's questions about your future. Did that add to your journey?
I had thought about it. Yes, it was like, oh my God, what am I do? And then I kind of drove my wife a little nuts because before I got my prosthetic, my garden tractor happened to be setting out. And I wheeled over to my tractor in my wheelchair, and I climbed up and sat on the tractor. And my wife's like, what are you doing? I said, making sure I can get on the tractor to use it to cut the grass, even though I lost my leg on the right side. And she's like, oh. So I do it, and doing other things around the house, I'm a little slower, but I attribute some of that I'm in June going to turn 69 years old. So I have to remember, yeah, I'm getting older. I can't do everything I did when I was 20, 30, 40, but I'm still doing a lot. So I go to the gym, go to
Great.
Planet Fitness,
Nice.
and walk on treadmills and ride a stationary bike and lift some weights. And I've seen a lot of other amputees doing that. So I'm like, it slows me down a little bit, but I'm still going.
Yeah, and I think you're going to continue to go. And we're going to get into some of the things you're doing now. But I want to give it a shout out. First of all, you said YMCA gave you a free room. So certainly a shout out to YMCA for that. Christy Atha and Beth Eubanks. And you mentioned Leslie Green. That's how we met. We met on one of the calls they have through Hanger. And it was a fantastic call. So I just wanted to make sure I said thank you to them. And certainly thank you to you for your time. But one of the things you had been discussing, and I wanted to learn more about, is what you're doing with your group in Pennsylvania and how it's growing and growing, and you want to continue it to grow. So I definitely want the people that are listening to hear more about it. And if they're interested, certainly how to get a hold of you so they can join.
Right. Well, mostly what we're doing now is we've become friends. We talk about things that we're doing, any little hints, like the thing I showed with my foot rotating. I showed it to another guy who's at my meetings that's a mechanic. And he said one of the things that he has problems with is he has to work the arms for the lifts that pick the cars up to work on them. Yeah. And he has to get down on his knees to do that. Well, with his prosthetic, his toes are straight down and it's uncomfortable to do that. Mm-hmm. So when I showed him the thing that rotates, I had saw another guy that was a construction guy and would rotate the foot, that when he was on his knees, the foot was flat on the floor instead of the toes in the floor. And he really liked that idea. He was talking about getting 2x4s or 2x6s and wrapping them in a blanket and make it so his prosthetic would rest on that instead of the toes. So we're talking about things like that. I have a couple upper limb amputees, one girl that I call my second in command. She is a right below the elbow amputee. She's in her 30s, and she actually had a child after she lost her arm. She lost it in a four-wheeler accident.
Okay.
Where that four-wheeler, two-seater four-wheeler tipped over, and she stupidly, she admits it, and that's what she says, tried to put her arm out to stop it from rolling over. Needless to say, losing her arm for it being all mangled up. And then we had another guy show up that had his arm amputated above the elbow back in 65.
Wow.
And when she met him, she's like, oh, another upper limb amputee. And they started really conversing back and forth. And he wears one of these ones with a claw that's, up here, and he locks it and unlocks it and moves things by working his shoulders, which I'm sure you understand those things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she had never saw anything like that. And so they were conversing, and she has a prosthetic with a hand that she can move by thinking about it.
Wow,
not
amazing.
Well, but she wants to do that. Mm-hmm. And so he hadn't seen that. So they were conversing back and forth. So we were, mostly what we're doing now is conversing, getting to know each other, talking about things that we're doing, how our amputations went and whatnot, and just really getting to know. Maybe down the road when we have people and we got to know each other, then we might try to go do things. I've known other groups that do things, but we're just getting really now built up and to get to know each other. So that's what I like. But just, I've had people say, just to get to sit and talk to somebody. Why didn't I turn my phone off?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, just getting to be part of the community and talk to others, I think it's very cathartic. It's something that, I guess, one of the things that I had talked about when we first met was the feeling that we can have as being alone, because we walk into a Walmart, let's say, and we're going to be the only ones like us. So you having that group getting together, and I was going to ask if it was both upper and lower, and there's no bad answer to that, but it's refreshing to hear that it is both. That's great. What is the name of your group? Because I know people can find it on Facebook.
I have a group on Facebook called, now if I think the whole thing, The Susquehanna Valley, because I'm in what's known as the Susquehanna Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Susquehanna Valley group for limb loss and limb different people, because we invite people like you that were born missing part of your limb.
Yeah.
So I'm open, and I even tell them when I talk to people, family members, caregivers, because that's somebody like my wife, when I was in a wheelchair and couldn't do a lot, my wife was technically my caregiver.
Yeah.
And there's a number of other caregivers, and that's another role in itself. And so I open it up that anybody wants to come, because I have some of the people that their spouse or a family member brings them to the meeting, especially if they're in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I said, you're more than welcome to sit here and listen, because you might learn something that will help you with the person that has the limb loss. And, which Leslie Green does the same thing on her meetings.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful, because those caregivers are certainly a key role in getting to the next level, or to the happy level that you're at now. So if people wanted to attend your YMCA or get on the Facebook group, that would be how to do the Scott. I can't remember that. I apologize. I would butcher the name if I tried it again.
Well, like I said, I had to stop and think about it too. It's kind of a long name.
That's okay. Where's the YMCA located, just in case people happen to be in your area and they go, oh, I know where that YMCA is.
It's in a town called Sunbury, or a city, basically, small city. It's not very big around here, but it's in Sunbury. It's a very nice YMCA, and they let me do that in there and have enough parking area for people. And it's nice now. I've got the email of the woman that schedules. I just tell her, and I try to do it every third Saturday of the month. Perfect. Is what I've decided to set it on.
Perfect.
So if it's the third Saturday of the month at 1:00 in the afternoon, that's when the meetings are. Perfect. So, and I've had people, like I had a few people show up because of the article that got put in the paper. And I just thought I wanted something, I didn't expect what, but they wrote a rather big article in the paper, actually.
You got the prop there, you're going to show it. And I'm sure there's a link to the online version. I'll make sure I link to that in the description.
Yeah, and Amputee Coalition has put it on their website, so I haven't found where it is, but they were nice enough.
Look at that.
Even put my picture in there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's about a quarter or more of the page that they put the article in. And I actually, the day it came out on a Sunday, I had a person call me that morning that just got the paper and saw it. And I had my email and phone number in the article. So that was something that, and then this other fella that was amputated in 65, him and his wife saw the article, showed it to him, and then they decided to come to the meeting. Didn't even talk to me. They just showed up because it said when it was, third Saturday of the month at 1:00, and they just went to the Y, and there it was. So
I love talking about this, because it's almost a lesson of, you just took charge, and you're taking charge not only for yourself, but you're taking charge for other people. I was fortunate enough to have Kayla Inman on, and she did something kind of similar in Colorado. And I think that could be a lesson to all of us. If we're part of this community, we could also make a positive difference, and you're doing that, John. So one thing I wanted to ask you, though, what is something that you've learned about being an amputee that maybe you didn't know before going in?
That it is not the end of life. It is not the end of, whatever you're planning on doing or have done in the past. This is something we tell people when you go to a prosthetist to get set up for a prosthetic. They want to know, what should I tell them? I said, tell them what you used to do. Great. I used to do this. I walked in the woods. I rode bicycle. I did this. I did that. they want to know that because they'll try to get you back to what you did before. That's the main thing that they want to know is what were you able to do before? We want to get you back there. And that's an important thing is knowing what you can do, you know. And like I said, I've seen people with far more amputations, you know, quad amputations, both arms and legs, and they're still doing quite a bit. And even like in PowerFest, they set up things. One of the things they had at the last one was sled hockey. People riding a little sled playing hockey. And they had people who had never done it and had just lost, one woman had just lost below the knee her legs a few months before going to PowerFest, which she found out just out of, you know, didn't think they would be able to go. And other people said, there's no reason. She was in a wheelchair, didn't have prosthetics. And the next thing she knew, she found out and was set in a sled hockey, you know, on a hockey sled, and was out going around on the ice on that.
Wow.
And I've seen another woman that I know from there that just got her prosthetics not long ago. And even without the prosthetic, she's skiing on a little sled. It's got one ski underneath her, and her ski pegs have little skis on them. And she is, I saw a video, she's flying down the mountain on these skis. And there's a lot of things that people are doing that. People are swimming. You name it. You can practically do it, and other stuff. I mean, there's wheelchair basketball where people are in wheelchairs playing basketball. There's so much out there. I never even gave any of that stuff a thought before. And, you know, learning what's going on. And when I first, you know, a couple of years in, we had a camper at a ground that was a seasonal camper. We were there, the camper was there permanently. And I had a good friend that helped us get that, and they were right next door to us. And then he was one working on other campers, washing the roof and whatnot. While he's up on the roof of the camper, washing it with a power washer, we've got a ladder at the one end, and I'm climbing up the ladder, handing him stuff. and he's giving me, he's a good friend of mine, so he gives me the devil. He says, don't have missing part of a leg slow you down. Come on, get up here. And some of the other people finally were going, isn't that guy being mean to you, talking like that? Because they see me walking. I says, no, he's just doing that. We're good friends, and he just does that, and it gets me moving more. So, you know, wow. We do a lot of stuff.
Well, that's a great story. I had recently, you talked about some of the resources. I just interviewed Dan Aldridge, who's the president of the National One-Arm Golf Association that me growing up with, you know, partial hand, you know, I didn't even know existed. And that's really interesting when you hear the resources and the things that are available. And the great thing about that organization is just not for amputees. That he's actually paralyzed in his left arm. And he's created a sling. It's called the Dan Aldridge sling. I mean, there are a lot of things. And I think what you said is extremely important, though. What did you do before? And continue to work towards doing that again, because it is possible. I love that message.
Yeah. That's what a lot of us try to tell people that are, I'm going to be getting a prosthetic, and how do I talk? And he said, you really need to get to know the prosthetist, become a friend with them. If they're not willing to do what you'd like, you know, get you back, don't be afraid to go to somebody else.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice.
You want to do what you're able to do, not what they said, because there's doctors out there that I've heard people tell stories. They're getting an amputation of their leg. And they said, well, what did the doctor would ask them? What did you do before? Well, I rode bicycle. Oh, you won't be able to do that.
Yeah, no.
Baloney. No, you can ride a bicycle.
I'll tell you.
And they make special bicycles too. So
absolutely. I think the sky's the limit. I had a guest on named Wafa Lavelle, and she went through quite a bit of her life, unfortunately, where her prosthetist didn't really look out for her, or the story is on the podcast. But when she went to Hanger actually and met the right prosthetist, her life changed, and now she is a peer visitor for the Amputee Coalition. So those things are possible, and they're possible at any points of your life. So the last thing I want to ask you is, you've got a lot going on, but what is next for you? What are you still looking forward to as you move forward?
Well, I'm hoping that my live amputee group keeps going. That's something. I am also a peer visitor. I got trained by the Amputee Coalition and Hanger, both. And I'm getting more involved with the peer visitor. I'm starting to get, I've had a therapist from Ohio, another state, found out about me through another guy that has live online meetings. And she contacted me and said, would you be able to talk to somebody that just got an amputation? And I said, certainly. So we ended up having an online meeting like this. And I got to talk to the people and told them what I'm doing. And they're like, wow, we had no idea that life can go on like this after an amputation. And I go, it certainly can. So that's what I'm trying to push and get involved. I've been trying to get involved more with the Amputee Coalition, and they call lead advocates. That's where we're trying to get the governments to promote more things, make things more accessible, have laws done that make things more available. I'm trying to get into that. I'm figuring I'm retired now. I've got time to do stuff like this. So...
Sounds like you're keeping yourself busy, and thank you for everything you do, because you're making a difference within the community. And I want to thank Christy Atha, Beth Eubanks, and Leslie Green again for allowing me to be on some of the programs that got me introduced to you and all the great things you're doing. So definitely want to get those in-person visits going up. And I guess at the end of the day, if anyone wants a little bit more information, is there a way you'd like them to communicate with you? Or if they can certainly go through me, and I wouldn't mind at all.
Well, I don't know if you want to publish it. My email address is simply jjwerner@gmail.com.
You got it.
I'm not afraid to give out my phone number. That is area code 570-765-3443. That's my cell phone. I usually have it with me. And except for when I'm on a meeting and I know junk stuff's calling me, and then that's when I ignore it.
Really?
Otherwise, I will answer it.
You don't want to talk about your auto insurance? You don't want to just answer and
yeah. Oh, we need to do this,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm getting a call from another state about insurance, and I'm like, no, I don't want to talk to you.
Well, thank you for sharing that contact information. I'll leave that up to you. I mean, certainly if you want that out there, that's.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
I'm not afraid for people anywhere to call me or email me. If they get on Facebook, just look up Susquehanna and you'll probably find my group, Susquehanna Valley. And that's the main part of the name. And you'll probably see my group on there. I try to post stuff to see what amputees are doing and things that are going on, plus my meetings. So, and I realize sometimes they're a little far away, depending on where people are. It's not that close.
Yeah. Well, I've been on that site. You have a lot of information there. As a matter of fact, I think you shared the story of the person who lost her arm and had a child. I think that was linked.
Yeah, that's I call her my right-hand person, even though she doesn't have a right hand.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, so look at what all you do. So, I know that's not gonna stop somebody. So it's to me, like I said, we're just like anybody else. We just have aftermarket parts, and that's what one of my t-shirts says. It says may contain aftermarket parts, so
I love that attitude, and I really admire everything you're doing. And I just really can't thank you enough for taking a few minutes of your day today to share what you're doing, share your story on the We're Not Stumped podcast. So thank you for being on today, John. I really appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for having me on here. I appreciate that.
Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Boland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikeboland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.